It was a peaceful yet chilly morning in Town City. Fall had just begun. The trees were bare, their leaves had turned all shades of red, orange, and yellow and fallen to the ground, and a thick fog covered the entire city. Joe was out for an early morning walk, something he occasionally did, around Square Lake, the park in the centre of Oakway shopping district. During his walk, Joe noticed a large crowd gathering around the massive gazebo in the centre of the park. Through the crowd he saw a strange-looking man standing in the middle of the gazebo. The man was tall and slender. He wore a suit. The jacket, pants, waistcoat, and bow tie were checkered, made up of every colour and shade. His shirt and pocket square were white. His shoes were black, made of leather, which shone like the midday sun on a lake. On his head he wore a large top hat, checkered like his suit, and on his eyes he wore enormous, thick black and white sunglasses. He also had light stubble and wild snow-white hair. Joe managed to squeeze his way to the front of the crowd, and could now see this strange man more clearly. The man then raised and opened his arms before the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "I am Anwir Deaux, your healer, defender, protector, rescuer, liberator, knight in shining armour, friend. Today for you, dear people," he said as he presented to them a bottle of an unusual liquid. To the already captivated crowd, "I have this, a bottle of my one-of-a-kind, never-before-seen, unique, life-changing, unmissable elixir. This special brew I call Deauxerance. It will cure all life's woes. You and your family's infirmities, wounds, psychological trauma, broken relationships, financial worries, anything, it will cure it all. Don't believe me? Let me call two friends I met earlier." Two men from the front of the crowd made their way to Anwir Deaux and stood at his left. They then disclosed their troubles to Deaux and those in attendance, after which Anwir Deaux continued his speech. "See here, two broken down on their luck, souls crying out for help, and help has arrived." Deaux stopped and each took a sip of the Deauxerance elixir, and immediately the two became exceedingly happy, jumping up and down, dancing like mad and clapping loudly. "See the results," continued Anwir Deaux. "Instant change, from deep sorrow to exceeding joy. You too could see results like this, or even better, if you get a bottle of Deauxerance today." Everyone in attendance swarmed Anwir Deaux to get their hands on a bottle of his incredible elixir, including Joe, who took one home to show the others. Joe brought the bottle of Deauxerance to Skallow, Major Nick Thompson, and the bodyguard. The bodyguard mockingly questioned Joe. "What is this?" he asked. "A bottle of snake oil?" "No," retorted Joe. "It's a magical potion. I bought it from a man named Anwir Deaux at Square Park." Skallow, Major Nick Thompson, and the bodyguard looked at each other. "You don't believe that, do you?" asked Skallow, troubled. "You seriously believe it's a magical potion, don't you?" inquired Major Nick. Thompson confronted Skallow, Major Nick, and the bodyguard, saying, "You lot are jumping to conclusions. It might be a magical potion. Try some and then decide." Despite this, Thompson was hesitant, along with Skallow, Major Nick, and the bodyguard. Even Robo was reluctant to try Joe's strange drink. Seeing the unwillingness of his friends, Joe himself decided to taste it. He opened the bottle and had a sniff. The bottle was mediumly sized and made of thick olive glass, and was sealed with a cork that could be reinserted, unlike most. The sticker with the Deauxerance logo stuck to the bottle resembled something from an old-timely circus. The liquid inside was crystal clear, and when disturbed it fizzed like soda. It also didn't smell of anything, except for a faint sweet odour that Joe couldn't place. He took a sip, after which Skallow, Major Nick Thompson, and the bodyguard asked him, "Feel any different? Happier, sadder, anything?" "No, not sure," answered Joe. "I feel something. It's small, but something." "You're not clapping, dancing, or jumping like those two," smirked the bodyguard. "To be fair," challenged Major Nick, "most products don't work exactly the way advertised, or not as quickly as they say. Those two are probably acting, speeding up the process a bit. The fact Joe feels something shows it must be somewhat genuine." "Or it's placebo," interrupted the bodyguard. "It could be. Let's check. Wait a few hours and see," concluded Major Nick. A few hours came and went. A few more hours came and went. Even more hours came and went. Eventually the day was over, and Joe hadn't started clapping, dancing, or jumping. He had seen some more changes in his mood, but nothing substantial. The six decided that it was placebo, or because Joe wasn't that bad before taking the elixir, probably leading to the flat results. However, the following morning Joe had changed, for the worst. He woke up with an exceedingly high fever, giving him shivers and cold sweats, an extremely sore throat, painful body aches, and a headache, plus his whole body had turned a strange mixture of blue, yellow, and green. Joe had just enough strength to get his phone from the table next to his bed and call Skallow, weakly saying to him, "There has been changes. Bring the others and probably a doctor," before collapsing. Joe weakly came to. He saw Dr. Jason Eckert, the Mclean's doctor, holding his right wrist and looking at his watch, and Skallow, Robo, Major Nick Thompson and the bodyguard looking over him at a distance, all wearing surgical masks. He then saw Major Nick approach Dr. Eckert, and believed he spoke to him as Eckert gently shook his head afterward. "What's going on?" asked Joe, slowly regaining his strength. "That elixir worked, definitely not as advertised," joked Thompson. "I feel worse than before taking it," laughed Joe painfully, wincing afterward. "Any ideas, Doctor?" inquired Major Nick. "Kind of," began Dr. Eckert. "All his symptoms point to the flu, an extremely severe flu, based on this intensity. All except the blue, yellow, and green colour of his skin. Doesn't align with any flu I'm aware of. There's nothing more I can do for now. I'll do research into it and inform you if I uncover anything. In the meantime, I will leave Joe with this medicine," said Dr. Eckert, reaching into his bag, pulling out 2 small boxes of medicine and giving it to Major Nick. "This should help with the pain and get that dangerous fever down," after which Major Nick led Dr. Eckert out. Not even an hour later, Dr. Eckert returned with a report from Rhea Porter, a prolific reporter for the Region Area Rag, which he had seen in the Region Area Rag. "Joe's not alone," cried Dr. Eckert as he burst through the door. "It seems like most, if not all, who drank that elixir contracted the identical illness as him. See here." All except Joe investigated Eckert's copy of the Region Area Rag, and on the front page was the story in question. Skallow read it aloud for all to hear. "Oakway, a small coastal suburb in Town City, was visited yesterday by a strange man known as Anwir Deaux. This man, Anwir Deaux, who refers to himself as a healer among other things, stopped by Square Lake Park, a large park surrounded by the suburb's shopping district. Deaux was selling a mysterious and possibly lethal concoction in the large gazebo located in the heart of Square Lake. According to local and highly respected reporter John Ernest, who spoke to those in attendance, those who had not taken any of the elixir or had not suffered any side effects, told Ernest, Anwir Deaux was extremely charismatic and motivating. The moment he spoke, it felt like you were in a trance. You couldn't stop listening, you couldn't stop looking, you couldn't move. Whatever he was selling, you wanted it. The elixir in question is called Deauxerance, and resembles lemonade. Today most, if not all, who attended and bought a bottle of Deauxerance woke up this morning with extremely severe flu-like symptoms, and their skin had turned a combination of blue, yellow, and green. All doctors and experts that we spoke to concluded, this illness is one we have never seen or heard of before. We have nothing on record which matches what the victims are suffering. We cannot say for certain if the elixir or just the crowd caused the outbreak, but we will continue to investigate and will update when we have any new information." No one knew what to do. Dr. Eckert left for the second time, and the rest discussed what next. Eventually the only thing they could think of was to return to Square Lake's gazebo and see what they could unearth. They left Joe with his family and sniffed around the scene. To their surprise, when they arrived, the authorities were there too. Their friend Sargent Bobby was leading the investigation. "What are you lot doing here?" he inquired. "This is a restricted area, you'll have to leave," he commanded. "Where's Joe?" he added. "That's why we're here," confirmed Thompson. "Joe's one of the victims of the outbreak. We want answers." "Why are the authorities here? I read about this in the Region Area Rag, and it didn't mention the law was involved. Has this situation turned criminal?" asked Major Nick. "I'm sorry to hear about Joe, and sort of," began Sargent Bobby. "I read that story, and I guess Mayor Aubrey did too, because just over an hour ago I received a call from the Chief of Police instructing me to assemble a squad, and for me to lead an investigation at the gazebo. Aubrey must suspect foul play, but can't be sure and wants us to evaluate the scene to be safe. During the Fours and Sergeant Bobby's conversation, Robo had sniffed beyond the police tape. Behind the back left leg of the bench at the back of the gazebo, stuck between the leg and the gazebo, was a roughly folded piece of what looked like paper, possibly a clue. Robo removed it and brought it to the rest. "Where have you been?" asked Skallow, slightly cross. "What's this?" he added. "What is it, Skallow? What has Robo found?" joined Thompson. Skallow unfolded the clue. It was a list. "It's a list," replied Skallow. "Possibly a list of Deaux's next stops," stated Major Nick. "Or previous stops," countered the bodyguard. "Or that, but a list of Deaux's stops, whether to come or past." Skallow gave the potential clue to Sergeant Bobby, who looked it over himself and said, "This could be. I'll notify the authorities in these areas and see if anyone matches his description or behaviour and take it from there. Thank you, Robo, for your input." A couple of days passed. Joe's condition was stable, and the medicine Dr. Eckert prescribed helped, but not enough to cure him. Sergeant Bobby had promised to contact Skallow, Joe and friends when any updates were available. Around midday that day, Sergeant Bobby phoned Major Nick, informing him, "I was just in a call with the sergeant at Elfin Police Station, and she told me that on Main Street at the Pocket Superette she saw a poster featuring a man who kind of fits the description." "Kind of? What does that mean?" questioned Major Nick. "She said it was advertising a show happening tomorrow afternoon by Education Ed, some sort of motivational speaker, at the Grand Fountain in the middle of town. She knows it's odd, but he has the same eccentric look and attitude as Anwir Deaux, so she thought it would be worth looking into." "Talk to you later, Sergeant Bobby," answered Sergeant Bobby. "See you," closed Major Nick. "What is it, Nick? Was that Bobby on the phone?" asked Thompson. Major Nick Thompson and the others were sitting with Joe at the time of Bobby's call. "Yes, and he might have a lead. A motivational speaker called Education Ed is performing tomorrow afternoon in Elfin at the fountain in the town square. I think not all of us should go, just in case Bobby has any more leads. I suggest Skallow, Robo and I go to Elfin, and Boris and Thompson stay. Is that okay?" Major Nick suggested. They agreed, and the three travelled to Elfin. Skallow, Robo and Major Nick arrived in Elfin that afternoon. They went straight to the town's police station to see the sergeant. Major Nick spoke to the sergeant, Sargent Deaux, explaining they were here on behalf of Sergeant Bobby, and to show them what she and the department had discovered. Deaux showed Skallow and Major Nick the poster, and with permission sent a photo to Joe. Education Ed was younger, much younger than Deaux. He had short, jet black, slicked back hair and clean shaven. He was tall and well built, with very defined facial features. On the poster, Ed was wearing a tight white t-shirt with blue jeans. Thompson showed Major Nick's message to Joe. Immediately on seeing Education Ed, Joe's eyes lit up. "That's him. I'd recognize that smile anywhere," he cried. "But why does he look different?" Thompson echoed to Major Nick Joe's response. Major Nick did likewise to Sergeant Deaux, after which Sergeant Deaux confirmed there may be a connection between Anwir Deaux and Education Ed, also confirming that she would assemble a squad including Skallow, Major Nick and Robo to meet Ed when he arrived in town the next day. It was the next day. Education Ed was in town. Sergeant Deaux, Skallow, Major Nick, Robo and the other officers attended Ed's show, with Deaux and the other officers in disguise. Deaux also secretly filmed the event to use as evidence to show Joe and to parallel with a recording of Deaux's presentation, which one of her detectives had found online. Almost the whole town of Elfin attended the event, surrounding the fountain and filling the streets. Like Anwir Deaux was surprising, as both were unknowns. Ed started his presentation the same as Deaux, continued like Deaux and ended like Deaux. However, unlike Deaux, Education Ed only asked one volunteer, not two, and sold a book, not an elixir. Sergeant Deaux grabbed a copy, and she, Skallow, Major Nick and her team took it back to the station to investigate. Back at the station, Deaux, Skallow and Major Nick, along with Elfin's senior detective, Detective Perky, studied Education Ed's book in his office. "Anything out the ordinary?" asked Skallow. "Looks like the same encouraging mumbo-jumbo all these motivation lot go on about. Nothing incriminating or connecting him to Deaux. Let's keep looking, though," replied Detective Perky. The team found nothing noteworthy until they arrived at the last page. On the final page was an advertisement for an online course offered by Ed. Detective Perky immediately searched it on an encrypted browser on his computer, and with the others investigated it further. "Anything here?" asked Major Nick. "No, not that I can see. The only scam here is the price." "But no, nothing," returned Detective Perky. "This doesn't make sense," argued Skallow. "Robo found that list back at Oakway, and the only location that confirmed a possible match was here, Elfin. We followed, and it looked plausible. It has led to a dead end. It doesn't add up." "I agree," nodded both Major Nick and Sargent Bobby. "But that's how it played out, and now the investigation has come to a dead end," added Major Nick. The investigation had come to a complete standstill. They restudied the book and website. Maybe they missed something. During this, Detective Perky made an innocent comment that changed everything. It was the breakthrough they were looking for. He said, "It's almost like he's some kind of wizard." At once, Major Nick and Skallow stopped. "That's it. It was right under our noses the whole time. The Wizard of Doom," cried Skallow. "Makes sense. It explains the shape-shifting and the volunteers are Scorpio and Strangles. But why only one for Ed?" "Anyway, at least we have a lead," agreed Major Nick. "Isn't he the same person who stole that treasure and kidnapped your dog? I can understand the motive for attacking your friend, but the others?" questioned Sergeant Bobby. "Who knows how people like that think," uttered Detective Perky. "We should assemble a squad to check the tiny house hotel and see if Ed's still there. With your permission, Sergeant," he added. Perky then turned to Skallow and asked, "I would like to take Robo along with us, if that's okay." Both Skallow and Beadle agreed, and Perky carried out his proposals. About 2 hours had passed since Perky left. Skallow and Major Nick contacted Thompson the bodyguard and Joe to update them on the developments. Thompson the bodyguard disclosed that Joe's condition hadn't changed since they last spoke. However, to their surprise, the two also disclosed that Bobby had received many calls of suspicious shows throughout town, city, and region area. All agreed that the Wizard of Doom must be behind this, yet couldn't prove it. However, that all changed when Detective Perky rushed into the office, sweating profusely. "What's wrong? Where's Robo?" demanded Sergeant Bobby fearfully. "We went to the hotel and to the room he was staying at. He let us in and—" stammered Detective Perky. "And what?" added Sergeant Bobby. "There was a giant evil-looking wizard and a black skeleton with glowing red eyes standing and glaring at us. Robo immediately lunged at the two, and the three struggled. Out of nowhere they disappeared, and I hurried back here," continued Detective Perky, sweating profusely. Thompson and the bodyguard were still on the phone and heard everything Perky said. Instantly the Wizard of Doom and Scorpio appeared to all in the office. The Wizard of Doom and Scorpio maliciously laughed at Joe when they saw him. "Enjoyed our medicine?" mocked Scorpio. The two then turned to Skallow and showed him Robo locked in a cage. "Unlike last time," Skallow replied calmly. "Very unoriginal, aren't you? This will end the same as last time." The Wizard of Doom growled and the two disappeared. At Doom Castle, Robo was curled up in his cage, yet keeping an eye on the Wizard of Doom and Scorpio, who were working on something together. The Wizard of Doom and Scorpio were working on an antidote for their disease. Why? Strangles had decided to taste some of the Deauxerance elixir for himself, and like Joe and the others, suffered the same results. "I can't believe that idiot Strangles. He drank a bottle of Deauxerance. He knew what would happen," grumbled Scorpio. "Let's just finish this. I'll deal with him later," sighed the Wizard of Doom, annoyed. A little while later they finished the antidote and transferred it into a small brown glass bottle with a dropper for a lid. "We will destroy the rest after giving Strangles his dose," declared the Wizard of Doom, as he gave the mixture to two of his skeleton servants, who went to complete their master's task. Robo had been intensely trailing the two during this, and had also been figuring out a way to escape. This cage was stronger than the last, and he could find no immediate way out. Then he got an idea. He used one of his claws to pick the lock, and after a bit of work, succeeded. Robo carefully exited the cage and quickly but quietly followed his prey. The two servants entered Strangle's room, who looked just as bad as Joe and the others. "What?" Strangles weakly asked. "Master commanded us to say, 'We're here to save you from your stupidity,'" one of the servants unintentionally mocked. "Master also commanded for you to take this. Master needs to destroy the rest afterward," the other servant added. The servant holding the antidote filled the dropper with a drop and squeezed it down Strangle's throat. Instantly Strangles recovered. Robo was hiding in the corner, huddled up between the wall and a chest of drawers, watching. When the two servants turned and began to leave the room, Robo lunged at the servant holding the antidote. The servant in question threw the antidote into the air as he fell to the floor. The other servant, out of instinct, dived to catch it before it hit the floor. "Got it," the servant cried as he caught it. At once Robo turned and snatched it out of his hand and bulleted out of the room. "Robo's got the antidote," Strangles yelled at the top of his voice, heard by all as it echoed throughout Doom Castle. Everyone in Doom Castle dropped what they were doing, including Scorpio, Strangles, and the Wizard of Doom, and pursued Robo. As he darted and bounced throughout Doom Castle, holding the bottle of antidote between his metallic teeth. The pursuit led them to the throne room, with the Wizard of Doom leading the charge. The Wizard of Doom lifted his staff and began shooting magic balls in Robo's direction. One of these balls hit the floor and transformed into a portal, which Robo instantly saw as his escape route, and the others saw as their defeat. Robo immediately entered the portal, and before anyone could stop him, both he and the portal vanished completely. The Wizard of Doom growled in defeat, loud enough to be heard throughout the surrounding area, and Robo appeared rolling into Joe's bedroom. Skallow and Major Nick had returned to Oakway following Robo's disappearance after Beadle and Perky closed the case, saying, "There's nothing more we can do." Skallow pet Robo on the head. "What's this?" Skallow questioned as he took the bottle out of his mouth. "What is it, Skallow?" the others asked. "What has Robo got?" Skallow looked to Robo, who started barking in response, after which Skallow reported, "I think it's an antidote." "An antidote? Why were they making an antidote?" Thompson queried. "Apparently Strangles drank some of the elixir and ended up in the same condition as Joe." Skallow laughed, hiding his shame. The bodyguard laughed. "They certainly got a taste of their own medicine." "Yes," Skallow replied solemnly under his breath. He continued, "It works by squeezing a drop of the mixture and using the dropper included down the patient's throat, and it should work right away." The bodyguard scoffed. "Instant results, where have I heard that before? You're sure Robo's not mistaken?" "He saw Strangles take it and recover instantly. I trust Robo," defended Skallow, and the rest agreed. Skallow followed Robo's instructions, and Joe fully recovered the moment he swallowed. After Joe recovered, Major Nick immediately contacted Dr. Eckert, Sargent Bobby and Beadle, and Detective Perky, recapping all that he had seen. The four promptly joined them to confirm Nick's claims for themselves. "How?" they asked, astonished. "This," Skallow answered, showing them the antidote, after which he explained Robo's story. The four stated, "We will make sure this antidote gets distributed to everyone affected as soon as possible. We don't know how, but we'll find a way." After which Dr. Eckert took the antidote and he and the other three left. The four fulfilled their promise. They contacted Mayor Aubrey about the breakthrough. Extremely interested, he interviewed Dr. Eckert, where Eckert retold Skallow's testimony. Immediately after this, Mayor Aubrey decided, "I will personally organise a mass inoculation in Square Lake. I will notify as many medical professionals as possible. I also asked John Ernest to do a story on the event, all with your help." "Will do," confirmed Dr. Eckert. After Aubrey finished, "I'll inform the others and begin from there." He followed. Then the two shook hands. The two contacted several doctors and nurses throughout Town City, who were all affected by the elixir. Skallow and all involved in uncovering the antidote joined, and John Ernest ran a story. After each patient had recovered, Joe stood in the centre of the gazebo and proclaimed loudly, "We are gathered here today in the same place where all this began. We put our undying trust in a man we had never heard of. We let him swindle us into purchasing a strange product based on an entourage of extravagant claims. We suffered because of this, to the point that we sincerely believed our lives were over. Luckily for us, my friend Robo found the solution to our problem and saved us. Take this, like I have, as a lesson not to trust everything or anyone who claims to have a product or proposal that seems too good to be true. Do your research so we do not repeat our mistake in the future.